Join us this new year for new conversations at the Commonwealth Club.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual Commonwealth Club and Creating Citizens program. My name is Kara Platoni, and I'm the U.S. science editor at Wired.com. And it's my pleasure to introduce science writer and best-selling author Mary Roach. Mary's new book is Packing for Mars for Kids, and it's a guide to the strange, frequently gross, but always awe-inspiring realm of space travel and life without gravity. So tonight is going to be really fun. We want to take your questions later in the program, so please submit them in the chat, at the text chat on YouTube. And first of all, welcome, Mary. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kara. Lovely to see you.
All right. So the thing that amazes me about this book is that humanity is just way better at space travel than we should be. Everything that you write tells us that we are really not very well adapted to any environment other than Earth. So your book is kind of this cool story of how some very smart people have solved the problem of getting the human body into space. So I thought we could talk about some of those problems and some of the ways that people have tried to engineer solutions to them. And I think the biggest problem, the one that you start out with, is that we're not very good at floating.
We're not good at floating. No, we evolved for Earth gravity. And when you take that away, when you take away gravity, every machine on Earth stops working. Just about, not everything, but a lot of things stop working, including the machine known as the human body. There are things that don't work that well. And what I loved, what was so fun to research was in the very early days, before any human had even gone into space, there was this period of hand wringing and like, what if the eye changes shape and the astronaut won't be able to see? What if you won't be able to swallow? What if food doesn't move along the alimentary canal? Like, what if we need gravity for that? What if, what's going to happen? So there was a lot of baby steps. It was sending little animals and primates up and, measuring the heartbeat and measuring, just making sure the system still worked because nobody knew.
Yeah. So they were worried basically that what if the human body can't do normal human body stuff in this
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the things they possibly weren't thinking about, like the fact that when you don't have gravity on your bones and your muscles, you don't have resistance, and you don't have you're not walking with weight. Your body's kind of like, these muscles and bones, I don't really need them anymore. I'm just going to kind of dismantle them. We don't need those anymore. And that's bad. And that was, possibly not something that was anticipated in the beginning. The beginning was like, will people be able to begin to pee? Like there were tests. There was I wrote about it in the book. There was one of those zero gravity flights, where that does the trajectory like this. It was a smaller jet, not like the Vomit Comet, where when you go over and down, you have 20 seconds of weightlessness. And so they had these volunteers, I think it was the Navy did this, and they had them drink like 7 or 8 glasses of water before they went up, and then gave them like something to pee in while they were floating, just to make sure that they could initiate micturition. That's what they said, micturition being kind of a wonky military word, I guess, for urination. Anyway, so micturition. And they peed fine.
Okay.
They could pee fine.
Thank goodness. So is the problem that on Earth, liquids move down? In space with no gravity, liquid could go anywhere it wants to?
Yeah, exactly. That's an issue. Not starting to pee, which was the inquiry of that particular way back when experiment. However, though, with the bladder, the way the bladder works is as the fluid settles to the bottom and it starts to expand, the organ starts to expand, and there are stretch receptors. It's a kind of nerve that tells your brain, well, this is stretching to a kind of a scary point. That means it's getting very full and you need to empty it. That's how we know we have to pee. Well, in zero gravity, in weightlessness, the material, the urine doesn't collect, and it kind of goes all over the bag that is the bladder. And so you don't get that signal when you should. And then it can get so full that you can't start to pee. And that's a self-catheterization situation on the spacecraft. Yeah.
No, okay. So there's that problem. There's the problem of, will astronauts lose their muscles because they don't have to do any work to lift things and to move around?
Right.
What about the problem of, do people get sick in space?
People get space motion sickness is a real problem, because the inside the ear, the way that we know if we're standing up or lying down or what we're doing, how we're oriented in space, we need gravity, because what happens is these little concretions, these little basically minerals, little rocks in the inner ear, those move around kind of like in a pinball machine. I mean, they're whichever way you have turn your head, they're landing on these little bristles, and that tells your brain, oh, you're lying down, or what position you're in. So in zero gravity, those are just floating in there. So you move your head suddenly and they're like ping, 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 ping. So they're telling your brain, you just stood up and lay down and stood up and lay down and but your eyes are going, no, you didn't. You just turned your head. And so your brain responds just by throwing its hands in the air and making you nauseous. So that the first few days of a mission, the astronauts tend to be pretty sick. And in the early Gemini and Apollo, nobody wanted to admit that. It was thought of like you weren't a real man if you were sick. So they didn't talk about it at all. And this poor guy, Rusty Schweickart, an Apollo astronaut who got very sick, and probably not that much more sick than any other Apollo astronaut, but there was a concern he was going to throw up in his space helmet on a spacewalk. He was going to be in the airlock, I think it was, testing, or no, is he gonna, anyway, I forget. And he was going to be testing the life support system, and it was an important thing that he had to do. And he was really nauseous, and he was afraid they're going to call off the entire thing because he was barfing. And and that would have been that's a dangerous thing in a space helmet.
Yeah.
If you were to barf, the barf would kind of just float there. It could get in your eyes, and there's stomach acid in barf because it's coming out of the stomach, so that could sting, and that could kind of temporarily blind you, as could the barf sticking to the visor. Because when there's no gravity, the barf, I mean, if there were gravity, you'd throw up and it would kind of go down to the bottom, which is gross but not dangerous. Whereas in zero gravity, it would just kind of, and it would kind of cling, because when you take away gravity, now you have surface tension as the force that's determining what happens to these blobs of vomit or water or whatever it is that's floating around. So they kind of like stick to the eyes and the nostrils and the mouth, and you could breathe it in. And so it was a concern that that NASA had, and there were experiments where they were simulating, going on the simulated weightlessness vomit comet, as it was called, and that would be something they would test. And I know that in one of those tests, for the simulated vomit, they used Progresso vegetable soup.
Okay, so astronauts have to practice being in zero gravity or something like zero gravity, and they have to practice doing all of this normal life stuff, like how do you use the bathroom, how do you deal with not getting sick, right? So tell us a little bit about tell us about the vomit comet. What in the world is the vomit?
Yeah. The vomit comet. Well, the vomit comet has been retired since I did the book, but there are still there's a company that does it now called Zero Gravity Corps. But it's basically a plane, like a big passenger jet plane that you would take to fly across country, but most of the seats are gone, and there's a few in the back where you sit when you get out to where they're going to do the roller coaster. It's just sort of like up and down and like steep. Like, don't look out the window. Plane heading steeply toward the ground.
The plane is going like this?
Going like this. The plane is going like, yes, exactly. And as it goes over and down, you have about 22 seconds where you are floating. You have no weight. Wow. And it is so awesome. You are a soap bubble. You're just floating, and your organs inside you are floating, and your hair is floating, and it's incredibly kind of physically euphoric and fun. And provided that you take the anti-nausea drugs that they give you beforehand, which is important. Otherwise, it goes from being like the most awesome day of your life to the worst day of your life. There was one guy on our zero gravity flight named Pat, and Pat, he was sick before we even started doing the roller coaster thing, and they took him and kind of took him floating to the back and strapped him in a seat, because you can imagine if Pat had thrown up where in the place where everybody's floating around doing their stuff, that vomit would have floated, or would have been everybody's companion on the flight for the duration of the flight.
Oh no. Poor Pat.
It would have come back down, because you go over and down, and then the plane pulls out of the dive, thankfully, and comes back up. And now you have, when they're accelerating, going back up, now you have double gravity. So you're lying down in the plane, you weigh twice as much. You can't pick your head up off the floor of the plane because it weighs twice as much, or your neck. Well, I don't know. Some people's necks are strong, but I couldn't pick my head up. And then you're at one gravity, and then you start to float up into the air. Wow. So it's this bizarre, lying on the ground, being super heavy. And then everybody just sort of rises up. It's like some weird, I don't know, what's that religious thing where people
where they float?
No. Where everybody's supposed to float. I don't know. There's a word for it.
So, but
someone will write in with it.
Maybe
something.
Somebody
anyway.
will chat
Yeah.
us. So you have 22 seconds where everybody's floating, and then 22 seconds where you're super heavy. And then in those 22 seconds, are they trying to do science experiments, or are they just flying around?
Yes.
What's happening?
They're often they're testing things, because for example, the zero gravity toilet that was tested. They hauled it onto one of these big planes. Anything that you're going to send up into space that has to function without gravity, be weightless, that's got to be tested. So everything gets hauled over onto one of these planes and flown, and 22 seconds at a time, they're testing it.
Wow. Yeah. And then so everybody has 22 seconds to do the first part of the experiment, then they got to stop.
And then they got to like lie there and be heavy. And then because it goes like 2 gravity and then 1 gravity, it's gradual. So you're like, you feel yourself sort of, part of you sort of comes up, and then you're literally just weightless floating for a while, and then you're gradually, it's not like it drops you. Like,
wow.
We're going from 2 to 0. It's gradual. It's lovely. It's very nice.
Is it like swimming? That's the only thing I can think of to compare it to.
I've heard astronauts say that, and it is, that's the closest thing, but it isn't, because it's not like swimming, because when you swim, you feel the water holding you up, and when you move, you feel resistance to the water. You don't have that. You just have no weight, and nothing's you're basically free falling is what it is. You could jump off a very high building and have the same experience, except there'd be more wind and more death.
It's a very bad ending.
yeah, exactly. Maybe I guess it would be better if you have a little split second of that, like on an elevator or a roller coaster. When you've got a second or so of that in certain scenarios on Earth, but it's not the same, because it's sort of like lurching, and you feel your insides kind of like shifting, and it's not that pleasant, but it's very pleasant. And that you can, if you want to blow like $6,000, you can experience that. Zero Gravity Corporation, now they're the ones that do this work for NASA. Now the Vomit Comet was retired, and you were never supposed to call it the Vomit Comet. You were supposed to call it the Weightless Wonder.
It's not as catchy.
No, it kind of makes me vomit. Weightless Wonder.
Is there any other way that astronauts can practice for space before they get to space?
Yes, they do. They do use it. There's a giant swimming pool, like huge swimming pool at, there's a couple of them, but one at Johnson Space Center, where astronauts do most of their training. And in this giant swimming pool is submerged pieces, replicas of the International Space Station. So
Hmm.
they put on they'll put on a full suit and they'll get in the water. So they are floating, and it's adjusted so that they are floating in water, so it approximates weightlessness, so they can move through. There's all these handles and footholds, and they rehearse over and over and over, step by step, second by second, how they are going to move. Like, say they're fixing a solar panel or something, they've got to go outside and move along the outside, traveling 17,000 miles an hour. I mean, you look down, you're like, ah,
yeah.
So it's something they rehearse over and over, and in this giant pool.
That
NASA.
part sounds fun. I'm not so sure about 22 seconds of free fall in a plane, but that part sounds cool.
Oh no, you would love it, because
Really?
they give you the good. It's like the patch behind the ear. It's an intense version of that. Polamine. It's good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you can take anti-nausea drugs to avoid barfing in your helmet. That's good to know.
Yes.
So,
You can take that. Although the astronauts don't, because that just delays the adaptation to it. They basically have to muscle through it and adapt. Your brain adjusts. Your brain goes, okay, new scenario, new rules. We will figure this out. So the brain does adjust, and but it's kind of like going to sea. I think you have a couple of days of being seasick as a sailor, and then you kind of get your sea legs, as they say. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
They got to kind of tough it out for the first few days.
They do, yeah.
Adapt, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So another challenge is people have to eat all of the time. If you're going to send them to Mars or somewhere really far away, you have to pack a lot of lunch. So let's talk a little bit about space lunch. Here on Earth, my number one requirement for food is that it be delicious. I think space food is different. What qualities do you want in a space food?
Yeah. Well, in the early days, Gemini and Apollo, that space food, it was designed to constipate you, and I'll tell you why. Because there was no toilet.
Oh no.
So the astronauts, particularly on a short, say you're matter of days mission, their goal was just to not have to use. What you had was a bag to go to the bathroom. You had to poop, a bag with a little adhesive peel and stick ring that you slapped on your butt, and you went in the bag. Anyway, so the food was specifically designed. It was highly processed, no fiber, no, none of the stuff that ends up in your poop. And it wasn't very, highly processed, sterile, pretty bland. And they made it, they didn't want any crumbs, because in space, if you have crumbs, they're going to be floating around. They could get into the equipment. They could, cause problems. And plus it's gross. There's, crumbs floating around in front of you all the time. So they were designed to be just popped in your mouth. They were like little tiny sandwiches. They were like they were called sandwich cubes. And there were bacon cubes. There were everything was a little tiny cube. There were tubes also in the Mercury era that you just sort of squeeze a sloppy Joe into your mouth. But the astronauts hated that, because you couldn't smell or see what you were getting until you squeezed it in your mouth. It's kind of like, what am I going to get?
So you don't know. It could be broccoli. It could be cake. You don't know.
There'd be. It would say on it what it was, but if it says sloppy Joe, it may or may not have any resemblance at all to a sloppy Joe. It'll be sloppy, but
we have a really good question. This is from somebody who's 9 years old, which I think is related to the sloppy Joe. So they want to know: have you ever tried any space food? And was there anything that you liked or you didn't like?
I did try. Yes, they still use those tube foods. Some of the fighter pilots, because they're in the middle of a mission and they have helmets, and you can kind of plug it into the helmet and squeeze it into your mouth. There's sort of a straw that goes through this port, and you squeeze it in. So I did try sloppy Joe, and it kind of just was like a meal of spaghetti sauce but run through pureed. So, just not very fun to eat, because there's nothing to chew, right? Everything.
Because it's not like the bread part, and then
it's just like
it's all mixed.
It's like they put a sloppy Joe in a blender and then put it in the tube. Things that worked well, like the applesauce, is basically applesauce. That was fine. The applesauce was good. I know that these days the food is much more it's more normal. Like they figured out, look, if it's a little bit gloppy, and you eat carefully, it'll stick to the spoon, or you can, doesn't have to be these little cubes. And the cubes were coated in this oil to prevent crumbs. Nobody liked them. They were like fly into space and come right back down.
So everything's kind of like a sticky little,
like a
brick of food.
Like this, like the coating would stick to the roof of their mouth. It was gross. But that there's an astronaut, Story Musgrave, who he went up on, I think it was the shuttle, maybe the ISS, maybe. Anyway, but he really liked the shrimp cocktail. And because the shrimp cocktail is kind of like shrimp cocktail, there's not much you can do to wreck shrimp cocktail. So the astronauts would get all these choices to choose, for their menu, and for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he was like shrimp cocktail, shrimp cocktail, shrimp cocktail, every single meal. And I'm like, I'm with you, because I've tried some of the other stuff, and it's not so good. It also tends to be bland, because particularly for the long missions, if something is very flavorful, you kind of it has a limited amount of time where you're going to enjoy it. It's just like, oh, not that again. It's too intense. So it tends to be bland. That's why on the International Space Station, there's all these little bottles of condiments, like hot sauce, tubes of pesto. People bring their own delicious spicy thing, as long as it's considered. It has to be. I think they have to test it, and make sure it's sterilely packed, and like it's not gonna. Because they're concerned about, they don't want germs up there.
Right. They don't want to bring a strange microbe to space. That's going to take over.
Yeah, and it might mutate, and they might come back down, and cosmic rays might do something to it, and then there'd be a mighty plague and a disaster movie come to life. Yeah.
Did you know that NASA is experimenting with growing food on the International Space Station?
Yes.
They grew some chili peppers just this last fall, which was really cool.
That is really cool. They've been growing. Yeah, they've been growing stuff. The Soviets on one of their space stations had Salyut, I think it was. That there's this wonderful story that they were going to grow, just to see how they would grow onion bulbs. So they sent up onion bulbs, and they were supposed to germinate and see how they grow in weightlessness. And there's the astronaut Lebedev, I think was his name. He wrote this journal. And he said that, yeah, so we got the onions, and the scientists they would check in every few days. How are the onions going? Did they bloom? We're like, yes, they did. They bloomed. And then they kept asking us these questions, like, how are they doing? How are they doing? And he goes, my God, we have to tell you. They sent up some bread and salt. So we ate your onions.
Oh no, it's so
had
terrible.
Them with bread and salt. They were delicious. I'm so sorry.
It's very bad form to eat somebody else's science experiment.
They ate the experiment. Yeah.
Oh no, it's terrible.
Yeah, but just to have something fresh, something fresh is so it's so enticing. They also talked about, when there was an experimental greenhouse, again, just growing different plants to see how they would grow. This same guy said, we spent all our time just sort of hanging around the greenhouse, tending to them. They were our loves. That's what he said. They were our loves.
Oh, that's really sweet. But I have to imagine that they must miss Earth, and they must miss things like,
onions.
Smells of outdoors, even onions.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a good follow-up question on the topic of food. All right. This is from somebody in the audience. They want to know, what if you have gas in space?
Oh, excellent question. Okay. Well, we have really two different kinds of gas. So I'm going to start with the kind of gas that you get with carbonation, because this was in space. There was a lot of effort put into, can we have a Coke machine on the International Space Station, I think it was, or the shuttle, I forget. So the Coca-Cola company, I believe it was Coke, not Pepsi, they spent a lot of time figuring, they're like, okay, I think we've done it, because it's a problem, because with carbonation is little bubbles, when the bubbles are lighter and they float up to the top, and there's that wonderful fizzy kind of action that you have, and you drink it and it's lovely. But what happens, in space, the bubbles don't rise to the top, and then there'd be, it was sort of a frothy mess, but they did sort of figure out how to make it drinkable. But then what happened is the gas in the stomach normally when you drink carbonated beverages, the gas rises to the top of your stomach and, expands and you belch it out. But when it everything weighs the same, that gas doesn't rise to the top. It's kind of just all over. So you are bloated. You get that bloated feeling, but you can't burp.
Oh no.
Or if you do burp, water comes out with it. It is gross. So the astronauts are like, we feel bloated and we can't burp. And so this was a big failure.
So no soda in space.
So no soda, no beer. I mean, the beer was going to be an issue anyway, but no soda pop in space. So that's one issue with gas. That's the stomach gas. You also intestinal gas. Intestinal gas was something that NASA was concerned about, particularly with a small sealed capsule, because of course the space capsule has to be very well sealed because otherwise you're in trouble in the vacuum of space. So it's a sealed space, small space, two people, two adult males, and if there was a concern because flatus, the gas in your intestine, is mostly, the main component is hydrogen. There's also methane. Both of those are flammable, and if they hit the right concentration, then a spark could ignite and cause a fire. And NASA was very worried about that, particularly after the fire on Apollo 1. So they actually had a flatulence consultant on retainer.
I would love to know how somebody gets that job.
Michael Levitt. I spent some time with him. He's related to Stephen Levitt. Is it the guy who does the what's the economy?
Oh, right. Freakonomics.
Thank you. They're related cousins, maybe. Anyway, so he was for many years the flatulence consultant for NASA.
Wow. Okay.
Very quickly, they determined that he was not going to reach dangerous levels. However, it could smell pretty badly, so they wouldn't send up foods that tended to produce a lot of gas or a lot of stink. So. Well,
that sounds smart, right? Yes, it's a lot of people in a small space.
Yeah, in a small space.
So going to the bathroom is really hard, and it sounds like it's pretty unpleasant. Without getting too, mildly gross, but not too gross. Tell us a little bit about some of the ways people have tried to solve this problem, because you can't hold it forever, right? Or can you?
I spoke to Jim Lovell, he of Apollo 13 fame. I called him because I was interested in Gemini 7, which was a restricted hygiene. It was a human body, like what is going to happen to the body without a shower for 2 weeks, pooping in a bag? How is this going to go? And he said that he really thought he could make the entire time without using the fecal bag. But at like day 6, he's like, Frank Borman, the other guy in the space capsule facility, like, Frank, this is it.
No.
Pass me the bag.
So do they actually have a toilet now?
Now they have toilets. Yes, in the Gemini and Apollo, there wasn't room for a toilet. It was a very small space, trying to keep things light. It's a little weight as possible. It's the lighter it is, the easier it is to launch it. No room for a toilet. But once there was, the space station, the space shuttle, those had toilets, but not the kind of toilet like we have, like no water coming down and flushing things away. That requires gravity. Water without gravity just is blobs, kind of interesting to look at, but not helpful if you want to flush away what you just contributed to the toilet. That, by the way, is a NASA term, contributions.
The contributions.
Yes.
I have to go to the bathroom to make my contribution.
My contribution. Yes, the contribution. So the whole process, the whole mechanism had to be rethought. So the engineers, the waste management system engineers at NASA are heroes to my mind, because the fecal bag thing was a morale buster. It was awful. The space capsule smelled like a porta potty. There's a point in the mission transcript for, I forget which Apollo mission, where they're talking about, we're going to have to, power down the such and such M3, and then Whose is that? Get me a napkin. Jesus Christ, there's a turd floating in the air. It's actually in, and I know this because I did a, control F search of the word turd for the entire 1,000-word document. So anyway, those guys who came up with this system, it was a pretty heroic thing, and they have a little mission badge that says proud to be of service. And I think those toilet engineers have every reason to be proud, because they totally rethought it. It's not water, it's airflow that is kind of entraining the contribution, kind of like
a vacuum.
It's just it's more like, it's like a shop vac. It's airflow. It's suction, but yeah, like vacuum, but not, you're not. They explained this to me, the difference between suction and airflow. Anyway, it's air coming through the little hole up near the top, and you got to be careful as you sit down that you don't, you dock with it in a way that you're not going to plug up the holes. You are kind of just docking, and you have to like hold yourself to it because you can't sit on the toilet. You're sort of hovering above it, so you got to like hold yourself to it and hit it at the right angle. And it's not that easy, and it's tricky enough that down at Johnson Space Center they had, I don't know if it's still there, but they had something called a positional trainer, which was a toilet with a video camera in the bowl facing up.
Oh no!
Closed circuit TV, so you are sitting on there and looking at the view of your butthole, so that you're like, so that you can get your angle right. You're not too far back, you're not off to the side, that you're gonna, because it's a much smaller hole than an earth toilet.
Nope. I'm just not doing it. Nope.
And they're like, and I said, I want to try it out. And they're like, okay, we'll leave the room. You can, turn on the light in the toilet bowl, and you'll be able to see yourself, and you'll be able to experience the positional trainer. And then as they're leaving, they're like, Mary, you do understand this is not a working toilet. Because he said it's happened before that somebody's actually crapped on the camera.
Oh, yeah. That's bad as eating somebody else's space onions. You don't want to.
I know you don't want to do that.
We have some really good questions coming in. I'm excited about these questions. So, okay, so we already know that water is a problem in space for using the toilet. Somebody wants to know then, how do astronauts shower in space? This is a question from a 9-year-old.
Oh, great question. Great question. There were efforts to make a space shower. They were all failures, basically, because the water would come out. Well, first of all, it had to come out just right. If it came out slowly, kind of just like form a big blob. And if it came out too hard, it would hit your body, bounce off, and then little tiny blobs of water would go all over, and you had to chase them down and make sure you got them all, because you don't want like bits of water getting into the electrical system. So that didn't work well. They tried to do this sort of tube where the water, like, it would wash you, and dry you inside this tube, and it didn't wet you very well, wash you very well, or dry you. It just didn't work at all. There's that guy Lebedev, the one who wrote that memoir about being on Salyut, the space station. He said they had a shower, but the blobs of water would stick to your eyes and your nostrils, and so he said they would wear a snorkel mask. And he said, you cannot imagine how strange it is to see a naked man floating across the room to the shower wearing a snorkel mask, which is an image that stayed with me. So the answer to the question is, they don't shower. They use wet wipes, kind of, yeah. And some, dry shampoo, that kind of stuff that I never understood, that kind of like kitty
like
litter,
powder.
Yeah, powder kind of, I guess, absorbs the grease, sort of like that. There's some sort of dry shampoo, and they just wipe clean.
Wow. Yep. Could they skip it? Could they just say, I'm not going to bathe, and I'm not going to change my clothes, and I'll just stink for the whole trip?
I think they kind of did that. Well, with the Gemini and Apollo, they kept their suit. They were supposed to keep their pressure suit on the whole time, because if there were a leak, and the air pressure was getting dangerously low, they would be able to inflate the suit and they'd be safe. So they were going to, for that Gemini 7 restricted hygiene flight I talked about that Jim Lovell was on and Frank Borman, they were supposed to wear those suits the whole time, and it was just too gross. They finally said, okay, NASA said, okay, one of you can get out of it and be in your long underwear, and the other one keep one on. So they traded back and forth. And Jim Lovell said that his son after that would always say, my dad orbited the Earth in his underwear.
That's great. Who has to wear the clothes today?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this is a great follow-up question. This is from a 10-year-old listener. They want to know, do you sweat in space?
You do sweat. You sweat if you're exercising, and the astronauts, because they're worried about losing bone and muscle, they have to do weight training, and they do a lot of exercise. So they do work up a sweat just as they would on Earth. And it's very important for that. It's very important to have lots of fans, because if you're exercising, you're giving off heat and moisture, and if there's no gravity, there's no convection, there's no, like, the lighter, the hot air rises and goes away from the body and the cooler air would come in. It just hovers. It's like being in a super humid, like Florida, 98% humidity day. So it would just kind of hover there and you would overheat. So they have fans everywhere. That, like, fans are very important on the spacecraft.
Right. It's not like you can't just, like, crack a window, right, to cool off.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have to. And if you're sleeping and you're not in a good spot where the air is going to be circulating, your exhalations, the CO2 that, the waste air that you're exhaling, kind of just hovers around you. You can get headaches, and so you want to make sure you're near a fan.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are lots of challenges to overcome. I think one of the last ones that I wanted to ask you about is, it seems to me that one of the big problems about people is other people. So do astronauts get annoyed or, like, tired of being in this little tiny cabin with all these other people?
Yes. The answer would be yes. There's something that's called, there's a name for it. It's called irrational antagonism. And you don't have to be in space. You can be in an Antarctic camp where you're just stuck together, because if you went out into the wilderness, you'd freeze and die. So you're stuck together in a cabin, and a spacecraft, a small ship, anything like that. There's this, I forget the timeline of it. It's in the book, but after a certain number of days, like, the things that you used to find charming about your roommate suddenly just begin to really bug you, like the way that they eat, or the sound they make with their mouth, or the way they store their shoe, whatever it is, just begins to drive you crazy. And I spent some time with these two guys who'd been on Mir together and famously didn't get along, to the extent that one of the mission ended early and one of them came back down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I met with them on a replica of Mir, because I thought it would be interesting to, like, see them in the space. They get along fine now. They were great, but they said it was mission, the people on the ground that were more annoying to them. And that's something that they call that redirection, I think, where you're really annoyed with someone, but you depend on that person for your safety. So you don't take it out on them, you take it out on mission control.
Oh no.
So there's all these instances in the mission transcripts where people are really grumpy with the folks down at NASA, at mission control. Like, I can't go get that because it's over there in the next, do you not know where that's stored? This is really difficult, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But one thing NASA does pretty well is choose the right kind of person, somebody who's very easygoing, who's very patient, who has a good sense of humor. That's critical. You can't be an irritable, short-tempered, nasty, grumpy person.
Yeah.
You're not going to get chosen. Like, I applied to be in a simulated Mars mission in Moscow. I wanted to do that. Why? Don't ask me why. I thought it'd be good for the book. But so I applied, and they said, I made the first cut, and they said, well, we'll be calling you soon for an interview. It was the European Space Agency, and they said, we'll be calling you soon. So a few weeks later, the phone rings at 3 a.m. and I like staggered to the hall, like downstairs to get I think we didn't have cell phones then. I got out of bed and I'm like, hello. I guess you don't know that I'm on the West Coast of the United States. And they're like, okay, yeah, you failed the test. So that was the test.
Oh, so see if you get angry, you'd be really grumpy.
How do you deal with somebody calling you at 3 a.m?
Wow.
And for me, the answer is not very well.
Wow.
I would not make it as an astronaut.
Wow. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I was going to ask you for some career advice, because I think there are probably people listening to us now who would like to one day go to space.
Yes.
And I was going to say, so what should they learn, or what should they practice, or what kind of qualities should they have as a person? So one is you got to be really nice. You got to be kind of calm and patient.
Here's an example. Okay. Yeah. Peggy Whitson, Commander Whitson. I was supposed to interview her at some point, and I was just listening in on the conversation back and forth between her and Mission Control. And I was reading a transcript or something. Anyway, I was privy to a conversation between her and Mission Control where the people in Mission Control said, "Oh, Commander Whitson, all those photographs that you took earlier, we can't find them." And she just calmly and it was clearly like a whole morning's work. And she just goes, "That's fine. I'll do them again."
Wow.
And I would have been like, "Are you kidding me? Look again. Do you know how long that took?" So you have to be the kind of person who just is unflappable and calm. Also, not just so that you get along with the other astronauts, but also so if there's an emergency, you can kind of keep your wits about you and deal with it in a calm way. So that's, I don't know if you can make yourself be that person, and they find ways to kind of test you without you knowing it, like the phone call that I got. And then there was another case where there was a guy who was applying to be an astronaut, and they said to him, so we're going to need you to fly an F4. We're going to train you on flying, this fighter jet. I think it was an F4. And so, there'll be someone with you on board, and but we need you to kind of just see if that's something you could do. Well, they had no intention of having this guy fly that plane, but it was just like, are you willing to try that? Is that something, will you say yes? What will they say?
Wow.
So that was a test. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be kind of daring. You have to be up for a challenge.
Yes. You got to be up for a challenge. You got to be brave.
What about, there might be some people who are listening who are like, space, no way. I like bathrooms. I like showers, but they want to do something that would be helpful. They would like to design something for,
yes.
What do you think, what do you think somebody should invent that would make space life better for the astronauts of the future?
Wow. A lot of the things that have been invented on Earth have made life a lot better, like a Kindle, because you are limited to, you have a little personal bag and it's limited by weight. So, you can't bring a lot of books. So, music, an iPod and a Kindle, those are huge for, in terms of making life better and more interesting.
Stuff to make people like feel connected and be less bored, maybe.
Well, right. One astronaut brought us a karaoke machine, which could have gone well or really badly. Karaoke machine. Oh
no, I don't think I would want to be trapped with somebody with a
karaoke machine.
It depends on how well they can sing.
Yes, exactly. And what songs are on the playlist? Yeah, exactly.
Do they have good taste? All right. We are getting so many questions that are coming in. So I'm gonna start asking you some of those. Okay. So this is a question from a 10-year-old listener who wants to know, what is the coolest thing about space?
Well, I haven't been there, so I'm just guessing. Well, first of all, weightlessness is really incredibly cool. I was so surprised that sometimes astronauts they'd be like, "Yeah, it's so annoying. You put something down and it floats away." You know, I just want to be able to put something down. I'm like, yeah, but you're flying. You're like Superman. You are literally flying through the air. Don't complain. They're like complaining that so your hands float up while you're sleeping and hit you and wake you up. So that's something to invent, some kind of hand Velcro.
Like a glove.
Like so you don't hit yourself in the face.
Yeah.
Wait, what was the question again? The last one was.
That was the coolest thing about space.
I think I'm guessing. Well, for me, flying is my answer. But I think it'd be unbelievably cool to see Earth as this giant ball. You know, to see that in person would be unbelievable. Yeah.
All right. Somebody wants to know, is there a story or a chapter that you wish you could have included in the book, but you didn't get to report?
Well, there's things that I tried to do. For the restricted bathing chapter, I asked NASA, I contacted the public affairs office and I said, when the space shuttle was still flying, I said, so when this shuttle, because the shuttle's not that big, it's not like the space station. There's a lot of bodies in there for a significant period of time without a shower. And I said, can I be there when you open the door to smell the space shuttle? And they're like, no, you absolutely cannot. Go away. Please go away. So that kind of thing I wanted to do. Well, I would have absolutely loved to fly on the space shuttle, but that you can't as a private citizen. You can't unless I guess you could pay a ton of money. They had a couple of space tourists back then, but that would have been the ultimate. That would have been amazing. And there was, or in the 80s. In the early 80s, there was a journalist in space program. And an editor of mine had made it to the semifinals, I think, for that. And that would have been so cool if that kept going. I would have loved to do that. Yeah.
That would have been awesome. All right. Here's another question. Somebody wants to know, why did you decide to write an adaptation of your book for kids, and how different was the writing process for this version compared to the adult version?
Sure. Yeah. It was more that my publisher, W.W. Norton, they didn't used to have a young readers division, and now they do. And they said to me, oh, well, we're going to adapt Packing Forest because, it's an interesting topic for young readers, space, that is, and all the stuff we've been talking about. And they were going to just have, hire somebody to do that process. I'm like, no, my name is on there. I want to do it. My agent was kind of like, really, you want to do that? I'm like, yes, I do. Because to me, it was a fun challenge. First of all, you just sort of take half of it out completely, and then you do have to rework it, but not as much as you'd think. Because it's kids are smarter than you may think. 10. I'm aiming for about 10 years old, and 10-year-olds are pretty on the ball. They know what's going on. So it was a matter maybe of just some of the language was making it a little bit simpler, but not dumbing anything down. Just kind of making it clearer and not cramming too much into one sentence. So. But all the, but the content is the same, really, in those sections that I included. Really, I'm not writing for an audience that's too far removed from a 10-year-old. I guess maybe I'm kind of a 10-year-old at heart.
Okay, so somebody wants to know, who was your favorite astronaut to interview, and they also want to know if you could interview anybody who has something to do with space science. Who would that be?
Oh, gosh. Well, I would have loved to talk to Michael Collins because he was alive at the time I was working on the book, but they've done so many interviews, like Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins. It's pretty hard to get them to talk, but I wish that I would have loved to speak to him, because he wrote beautifully. His book was really beautiful. And for people who don't know this, he was the one who stayed in the module orbiting while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down to the surface of the moon. So he went around to the dark side of the moon by himself, just what a thing,
Wow.
to be the guy who's there and almost on the moon, but not there. He just, and he's a lovely writer. I would have liked to speak to him. Who was my favorite astronaut to talk to? You know what? It was the cosmonauts in outside Moscow. Well, in Moscow, there were two cosmonauts that I ended up speaking to, and they were fun. They answered the kinds of questions American astronauts maybe wouldn't have answered. They were, it was fun. We were drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning in the office of the director of the Museum of Cosmonautics.
You have your whiskey at 10 a.m. with your shrimp cocktail in a toothpaste tube.
Yeah. But it was fun to talk to Jim Lovell. I mean, he was an Apollo astronaut, and that was exciting to speak to him. And he's a lovely guy with a great sense of humor. Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking, after having read your book, I was thinking, if I was going to go to space, what would I do to make my life easier? And I decided the answer is absolutely you have to shave your head. That's just one less thing to wash, right?
Oh, yeah. But I just because I've got really flat, straight hair. I love the way, like your hair looks all thick and luxuriant. It's like glowing. I would not cut my hair. No.
Is there anything that you would want to do, or that you would want to take along to make life in space nicer for you if you were going to go?
I would want to bring things that have color, almost like maybe one of those paint books, those that shows all the paint chips, because there's so little color on a space. Out the window there's no color, and on the spacecraft everything is metal and gray and white, and it just seems, and also some nice smells. Some of the cosmonauts, those two cosmonauts, talked about it, how it smells of paint and rubber. It's horrible. And women, they would get bags of mail, and women would send perfumed letters, and we said we loved those letters.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. The smell of perfume.
That's very sweet. Do you have any idea about like where you would want to go if you got to go?
Oh, I would love to go to the moon. Absolutely. I would love to go. Mars is just too much time getting there. It's just too long a journey. I'm too impatient and grumpy, and I mean, it'd be amazing to be on Mars, but I'll take the moon. The moon would be amazing. It's a week there and back, right? It's not a huge time investment.
Sounds like a long time. I mean, a week in a car would be hard.
You're not spending a week on the moon,
Yeah,
but they're going to build I think we're on track to build a habitat there. I mean, some kind of permanent presence, and that'd be very cool to visit.
Yeah.
I would love to. Yeah.
Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, for people listening, we have a few minutes left. If anybody wants to sneak in any last questions. I was thinking, where would I like to go if I could go anywhere? Everywhere I thought of was just too dangerous to send people. But I recently found out that there might be little diamonds all over the surface of Mercury. Have you heard about that?
What?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Really?
Yeah.
Diamonds on the surface of Mercury?
Yeah.
Because it's so hot, and it's something. No, it's the pressure that would make diamonds. How would that?
Yeah. Well, so on Earth, the way we get diamonds is they form underground.
Pressure,
the pressure of Earth, the pressure of something heavy on carbon. On Mercury, there's a lot of carbon on the surface, and all of these asteroids have slammed into it.
Oh, so it's an instant diamond.
Yeah, they call them shock diamonds.
Whoa! Whoa!
Can't go because it's too hot.
Yeah, right. Right. It would be uncomfortable. But how amazing!
Yeah,
I mean, so they're probably all over the surface?
Yes, I think they're quite small. Like we haven't observed them yet. We've kind of just predicted that they could be there. So that sounds cool. And then I recently found out that Saturn has like auroras, the way we have aurora borealis on Earth, the northern lights. Turns out Saturn has them too. How beautiful would that be?
That'd be incredible. Yeah. Okay. Well, you were thinking just and if you could go anywhere, anywhere. Yeah.
No restrictions. Okay, so let me ask you this is a question from me. So it sounds like going to space takes a lot of work. It asks a lot of astronauts. They have a lot of restrictions on things. Why do you think that people still do it anyway? What is it about space that makes us want to do this thing that is so hard?
I think it's well, similar and a very similar. I mean, space is on a much larger scale, but when I like to go backpacking, and backpacking is you can't prepare a delicious fancy meal. You can't bring along an espresso machine. You're sleeping on the cold, hard ground. You're not going to sleep very well. It's a little uncomfortable. Your feet hurt, so there's a lot of inconvenience and pain. But you get to this place where there's no one else there, and you look, and it's just beautiful, and the stars are incredible, and no one else is around, and you don't care that it was uncomfortable and that you didn't get that much sleep last night, because it's so beautiful and so different. So I think, and I don't know, I'm the kind of person that's always drawn to kind of the empty places on a map, because I think, what's there? There's nothing there. I want to be there. And I guess that's just part of human nature, for some of us anyway, that urge to explore and to go somewhere that nobody's been before, to see what's there. What is it like? What will happen? It's the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, your book is called Packing for Mars. And I think we're going back to the moon next.
Yes,
and then
yes.
Next stop after that is Mars. And so just as we close, I'm wondering about your thoughts about what it will be like for astronauts to go to Mars, truly one of the big empty places on the map.
Yeah. Oh, I think astronauts are people who want to explore. And for a long time now, they really haven't been able to explore. They've been able to, they've been in low Earth orbit, which is cool, but it's not the same as going to the moon for the first time, or the fifth time, whatever. So to be able to explore, that's what they train for, and that's what they live for. And I think there'll be plenty of volunteers, and I think even for a one way, like you have a habitat there, and the idea is that the astronaut, I don't know if NASA would do this, but you hear a lot of talk about that you just be sort of emigrating. You're like, I'm going to go and I'm going to live the rest of my days on Mars. I'm not going to come back. And there's plenty of people who do that. Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, she said, I'm ready to go right now. This was a while back. I don't know how she is doing these days, but I think everybody would be like, I'll do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? Would you do it? Would you say, I'm going to take a one-way ticket to Mars and goodbye, everybody?
No, not me. No, I'll go to the moon for a week, but no, I wouldn't. I love the Earth. I mean, just the feeling of, a warm breeze or the sun on your skin, and I don't know, nature, just it's an incredibly beautiful planet that we live on. No, I wouldn't want to leave that behind.
Is going to Mars, is it even harder than sending astronauts to the space station or to the moon? It's much further away, right?
It's much further away. Yes. And there's just a lot of challenges. Also, you're exposed, because it takes a long time. You're to get there. You're exposed to a lot of cosmic and solar radiation, which is, no one's quite sure how deadly or dangerous that is. But the habitat on Mars will have to protect you. It could be underground or part of it dug into the soil. I mean, there's it's an indoors life.
Yeah, those are some really interesting problems to solve. Protecting astronauts from this new harsh environment, finding places for them to live long term. They can't pack enough lunch, so they're going to have to learn how to grow. They're going
to have to grow foods, and they're going to have to recycle their urine, that kind of thing. There's all. You're not going to bring enough water, but they have that. I mean, they have got that rig right now. They've had press conferences where they're like, you tell me the difference. This is tap water and this is recycled urine. You tell me.
Oh no,
Well, I processed my own urine. I didn't go so far as to drink somebody else's processed urine.
Did you really?
I did.
And how was it?
It was a different method, so it was very sweet. They'd done, I forget, some osmosis kind of deal, and it didn't taste like tap water. It just it was kind of like that horrible bug juice you get in the cafeteria, super sweet, but not like pee-pee. Didn't have that. Not urine-y. Not that bad, really.
Well, I'm glad you have brought the interview back around to where we started with, which is the problem of peeing in space. And so I wanted to say thank you so much to Mary Roach, the author of Packing for Mars for Kids. Mary's new book is available at your bookstore, your local bookstore. For more information on the Commonwealth Club and all of the upcoming events, you can check out commonwealthclub.org. Mary, it's been a treat to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Kara. It's always fun to talk to you. And the Commonwealth Club is just lovely for hosting me. Thank you, Commonwealth Club.
And thank you, everybody, for all of your great questions.
Yes, they were great.
They're wonderful. I'm Kara Platoni. Thanks to everybody, and take care.